Okay, hello everyone. I am Ahmed Helmi, founder of xpdays. And xpdays has started from a year ago, and we are making some meetups and webinars, especially in topics related to extreme programming and agile frameworks. And today's webinar is co-hosted with Agile Arena, presented by its founder, Mona Radwan. So Mona, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm first of all, I'm welcome our speaker for today webinar, Abid Qureshi. Thanks, Abid, for accepting our invitation for one of our webinars in series about agile methods. Actually, Agile XP Days and Agile Arena started the initiative of spreading the webinars about agile methods and agile mindsets around 3 months ago to be co-hosted together for the purpose of spreading more about topics, advanced topics about agility, so we can invite more speakers all over the world to introduce more topics and enhance the experience and share knowledge. So Agile Arena started 4 years ago for the purpose of having agility all over the world, especially in Egypt. We started in Egypt, and then we go forward to Gulf, like KSA and Kuwait. Uh, I'm the founder, and we have now some teams around KSA, Kuwait, Egypt, and so on. So I'm now inviting Abid to start his talk about Crystal, and I hope you are enjoying the webinar with Abid and the experience he already has about the Crystal framework or the Agile experience in general. Thanks, Abid, and please start your talk.
But you are mute.
Okay, so thank you, Mona, for the invite, and thank you, Hilmi. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a topic, of course, which is very dear to me. My name is Abid Qureshi. I'm a certified enterprise coach with the Scrum Alliance, and I'm also a certified Scrum trainer. I teach people mostly Scrum and XP, but and I'm a software developer, so I'm a practicing software developer. I've been developing software for 25 years now. So we'll try to make this interactive. Um, so, uh, okay. So I think my question to you, whoops, let me just get back to the presentation here. Admit all. So we still have some people joining. Let me just get back to, okay. So I'm going to ask the first question here. Can anyone tell me what the opening statement is of the Agile Manifesto? How does the Agile Manifesto start?
We are uncovering better ways
Okay.
for software development
You know this,
by doing it and helping others do it.
Okay, Hilmi, shut up. You know this stuff. So I wanted to ask the other people. That's okay. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Hilmi. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Yeah. So that's surprising for a lot of people. Well, first of all, actually, Hilmi, there is actually a trick question in there. My question was, what is the opening statement of the Agile Manifesto, right? Is that what I said, right? Okay, that's actually a trick question. There is no such thing as the Agile Manifesto. It doesn't exist. There is no such document called the Agile Manifesto. You can go there yourself and look at it. The document is not called the Agile Manifesto. Does anybody know what it's actually called? You can try if you want. You can Google. You can go straight there. Go to it. and tell me the title of the document.
Agile Software Development Manifesto.
Well, close, yeah. You're right. It's called the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. It's not called the Agile Manifesto. And there's a reason why, because it's not an Agile Manifesto. The manifesto itself is static, which is pretty much the opposite of Agile. Agile is your ability to change shape and change direction easily. Well-coordinated movement. I think in Arabic you say mutakayyif, being able to adapt to situations. This document, this famous document, which we often call the Agile Manifesto, is actually not a Agile document. It's not an Agile Manifesto. It's a static document. It's a rigid document. It hasn't changed shape or changed direction since 2001. So it's a long time. It's a pretty static document. It hasn't changed at all. So why do we call it an Agile Manifesto? You know, it's a very strange thing to call it an Agile Manifesto because it isn't an Agile Manifesto, right? So let's look at this word. The word Agile means, in Arabic we say mutakayyif, being able to adapt to new situations. Some people say marin, flexible, but this, you can see this document is not flexible. And the document is not about Agile. That document is not about Agile. The document is about what? Agile is, okay, so let's look at it this way. What part of speech is Agile? In Nahu, in grammar, you have different types of words. You have harf, you have fi'l, you have hal, you have sifa, you have damir, you have ism. What part of speech is Agile? Okay, you can look it up if you want. What part of speech is Agile?
Guys, you can share your thoughts through mics or through chat.
Okay, yeah. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? Is it a preposition? What is Agile? Okay. I'll give you an idea. No, actually, it's not a noun. Yeah, good guess. It's not a noun. Agile is not a noun. It's actually an adjective. Well done. Yes, it's an adjective. It's a sifa. The job of a sifa is to describe the mawsuf. And so that's why we can't call it an Agile Manifesto, because the mawsuf would be the manifesto, and the manifesto is not Agile. All right. So this document is not about Agile. What is it about? What would be what's the document actually about? What's the thing that's being described? The sifa describes an ism. The mawsuf is an ism. What is the sifa actually describing? It's not describing agility. It's actually describing Agile. What's the word after that? When you say this is a big elephant, what are you describing? You're describing the elephant. When you're saying this is a manifesto for Agile software development, what are you describing? Software development. Well done. Yes, this is a document about software development because software gives us agility, agility that we've never had before. So the title Manifesto for Agile Software Development means that this document is about software development. Okay, it's not about Agile. It's about software development. It's like the term we say this is a big elephant. Are we talking about big, or are we talking about the elephant? We're talking about the elephant. So this is an important point here, because what's happening is people are trying to follow Agile, which doesn't make any sense, because you cannot follow an adjective. An adjective is like big, small, tall, beautiful. You cannot follow tall. You can be tall or you can become tall, but you cannot do tall. You cannot use tall. You cannot follow tall. You cannot transition to tall in the same way that you can't say we started doing Agile. It doesn't make any sense linguistically to say we started doing Agile. Okay, doesn't make sense. So, but you can start doing Scrum. Many times people confuse Scrum with Agile. They think it's the same thing. Scrum is a noun. It's an adjective. Extreme programming is a noun. It's the name of a set of techniques. But Agile is not a noun. It's an adjective which describes a noun. So that's very important because you cannot follow Agile. You cannot do Agile. Many people try to do Agile and they think that you have to choose from one of these methods: XP, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, feature-driven development, Slur-Meller method, and Crystal. These are not things that you are supposed to follow. The opening statement, Hilmi, what did you say the opening statement is of the manifesto?
We are uncovering better ways for software development by doing it and helping others do it.
Yeah, we are
I like this statement. I like this statement. I live with it.
Most they don't know this opening statement. I asked them, what is the opening statement of the manifesto? They say individuals' interactions over processes and tools. And I said, no, it's not. Read it carefully. We are uncovering better ways of developing software. That's what this whole movement is about. That's what agility is about. It's about uncovering better ways of developing software. Now, on the second page of the manifesto, it tells you what increases your agility. Does anybody know what enhances our agility? There's one of the 12 principles. Your ability to adapt to new situations. That's what agility is. What gives us the ability to adapt to new situations? According to the second page of the manifesto. Okay, you can have a look. I think it's principle number 10. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. That's where agility comes from. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design. Modular design, software architecture and design, and technical excellence, your skills, your technical skills. Yeah. So that is what leads to agility. Unfortunately, people think that agility comes from following somebody else's practices. And Crystal is a remedy for prescriptive agile. So let's look at this. I know the stuff I'm saying sounds a bit crazy because it's not what other people teach. But if you look at, let me just change the slides. Okay. I'm just trying to change my slide here. Hang on. Oop. No. Helmi, can you go to the next slide? I think you're.
Try to swipe the screen right or left.
Okay. Let me see here. For some reason, oh, it's not working. So this is an example again of, okay, so if I stop sharing, strange. Let me see if I can stop sharing.
Helmi, can you share from your side?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. So I'll stop sharing from my side, okay? Okay, so there we go. So this is, all right, yeah. So there we go. Okay, so this is what people have said about Crystal, that Crystal is beyond agile. I think Crystal is agile, flexible, and practical. Now, why did someone say that? You know, this is very strange because isn't agility about being flexible, practical, being able to adapt to new situations? That's what agility is about. So when they say Crystal is beyond agile, you know, it's a very strange thing. Beyond agile, you know, agility is about flexibility, right? So, okay. So, okay, we can go to the next slide. So around the same time that I started to talk about Crystal, which is about 10 years ago, there was people who were saying that Agile is dead. And we killed it. Who killed it? So one of the authors of the manifesto, his name is Dave Thomas, and he wrote a famous blog article which said Agile is dead. And what the reason why is because the opening statement of the manifesto, it says we are uncovering better ways, but people stopped uncovering better ways. They feel like you have to be under this umbrella Many people call it Agile an umbrella term, right? So he said, we've stopped uncovering better ways, which means we stopped being agile. We stopped adapting to new situations. Okay, so we killed it because we're telling people that you must follow Scrum, you must follow XP, you must follow these things in order to be agile. But agility is about uncovering better ways. It's not about copying other people's practices. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Next slide. So the ironic thing is that Agile practitioners or practitioners, you can't really be an Agile practitioner. There's no such thing as a practitioner of Agile. That's like saying being a practitioner of big, or practitioner of tall, or practitioner of beautiful. You can be a Scrum practitioner, okay? But what happens is we're willing to accept variability and complexity in the products that we develop ourselves and in the environments we work in. However, if you go to the next slide, what we'll see is that we are reluctant to accept variability in the processes that we use to tackle complexity. We say, no, you must follow the process. This is how you're supposed to do things. You're not doing Scrum properly. You're not doing XP properly. You're not doing whatever it is properly. And so we are always promoting adaptability, but at the same time, we're asking people to follow our prescriptive methods. Okay. So there has to be as many solutions as there are problems out there. Now, Scrum is a solution to somebody else's problem. You have to figure out what your problem is and uncover better ways. So Crystal is something that came up from Alistair Coburn. Alistair Coburn is one of the authors of the manifesto for Agile software development. And he was discussing ideas amongst other people before 2001 in 1995, 96, 97. And he recognized that there is no one method that would solve everything. And so he came up with not a method for software development. He didn't come up with a method for software development. Instead, he came up with a method that helped you create your method for software development. Okay, so Crystal is not an agile software development framework. It's a framework for developing your software development framework. So it's a meta framework, a framework where you can use to create your own framework to adapt to your particular circumstances and your particular situation. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. And we're not going to go through all these topics, and we're going to go through a few of these topics. My slides have been condensed for this to fit the 1 hour format. So go on to the next slide. So Crystal is not a software development methodology. It's a framework for creating your software development methodology. And it has a DNA. And a DNA is like a common structure within ourselves. And so this is now we're going to describe the DNA. Do you want to go on to the next? So Crystal is a family of methods. And it comes with principles. Principles are the things that guide you. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll send you the principles after this, and you can have a look at some of the ideas and the principles. But we're not going to go into too much detail in the time that we have about some of the principles. But the idea generally is that the level of detail, the level of rigor, the level of strictness or prescription in the methodology is going to be determined by a couple of things. One is, what is the potential for damage? If you are missing some documents, if you don't have enough details, you're not following a strict process, what could happen? Could people die? You know, and some of us work in environments where if we get it wrong, then our patients will die. Or if we're working in aerospace and we get details wrong, then the airplane will fall out of the sky and people will die. So how much paperwork should you have? How many artifacts should you have in your development methodology? How many people should you require? All of these things are going to be determined by the nature of your product. Okay. Okay, we'll go into the next one. Next slide. Okay, so this is the DNA of the Crystal family. It has some principles, which we just talked about now. Properties to steer towards strategies and techniques. And we're just going to go through the first few. So let's go through the next. The opening one, though, it is a strategic, economic, cooperative game. Let's accept that software development is strategic, economic, and cooperative. Strategic means that there is no one way to do it. We have to look at our particular situation and come up with our own strategies. And economic means it's resource constraint, which means you have a certain amount of money that you can spend. And as a result, we have to work within those limits. And also, it's cooperative. The whole idea is that we work in teams. Okay. Okay, the next one. And the strategic game in the cooperative game, the whole objective of the game is to deliver working software, not only in this iteration, but also prepare for the next iteration. So if you're climbing a mountain, you can't not just have a plan to get up one ledge. You have to figure, okay, you're on the next ledge. Great. Now, do you have a plan to come to the next ledge? Okay, so you're always thinking one step ahead, and you're working with your team, cooperating. You have limited resources. You only have a certain amount of equipment and rope, and you're always thinking not just about the next step, but the step after. Okay, so that's the idea of the cooperative game. So go to the next then. Okay, so these are priorities that are in Crystal. First of all, remember I said Crystal has priorities and principles. And one of the priorities is project safety. So that's paramount. The mission is the most important thing. Okay. If you're in the military and you have a mission, the mission is the most important thing. Unfortunately, civilians take a less of a priority. Even the soldiers have less of a priority. The most important thing is the mission. And so this is around making sure the project is successful. The second thing is efficiency. How do we improve our effectiveness as teams and waste less time? And the next one is habitability. So we'll go over these in detail. Let's go to project safety. Next one. So project safety, this is what generally people consider to be project safety, right? On time, on budget, quality, and on spec, on scope. However, we know from a Scrum perspective that these things are not all fixable. In Scrum, we only fix 3 of those things. We fix time, we fix quality through the definition of done, and we fix the team size, okay? So that fixes our costs. What are we not fixing? We're not fixing scope. So we don't know how many iterations we can deliver. So we're not allowed to break through time. We're not allowed to deliver late. We're not allowed to have a product that doesn't ship, an unstable product. We're not allowed to go over budget, but when it comes to scope, we don't fix scope. We discover scope. That's how Scrum works, okay? All right. However, Alistair Coburn says, you know what? Sometimes you're stuck with fixed scope. Let's face it. There are projects which have fixed scope. If you have a sale and you need to fix something before a certain deadline, if you have a New Year's sale, and you're not ready by New Year's, you can't extend New Year's, you can't delay New Year's. So you're gonna have to deal with fixed scope. Fixed time and fixed quality and fixed cost are the same as in Scrum. But the question is, how can you get fixed scope? This square is something that's new. Most people, they have a project management triangle, which you saw before. This square is new. Nobody is sort of depicted project safety using a square. Usually there's 3 constraints. In a traditional waterfall model, you fix time, cost, and scope, and you discover quality. In Scrum, you fix time, quality, and cost, and you discover scope. But here, Alistair Coburn is saying, you know what? In some projects, they just won't have it. They say that you must deliver all of this stuff within this time with a predefined quality. So what do you deal with that? What do you do with it in that situation now, when you have people who are refusing to budge and saying, sorry, we can't do Scrum because we must deliver fixed scope? How can you deal with this? So you have to stay within these dotted lines. The dotted lines are your project boundaries. If you exceed or blow one of those corners, then your project is no longer safe. So what can you do to protect those boundaries? Let's go on to the next one. You start to put in some measures, and these measures will protect your boundaries. So for example, if you want to fix scope and quality, you can put in some automated acceptance tests. They will help you prevent from blowing your scope and your quality. There are some things that you might use in order to keep blowing your time limit, your fixed time. You might, for example, look for waste in the system by using value stream mapping. You might increase the efficiency of your team by creating cross-functional teams. So that way you don't have to hire more people. You have instead the same people who can do more things. And you can see that that's preventing you that's saving you from blowing your constraint on cost and time, resources. So these are different things that you could put in place to prevent you from blowing your limits and your project boundaries. But there is another dimension that Alistair Coburn is mentioning. It's a dimension that you don't see in this diagram. It's the vertical dimension. He calls it efficiency. Okay. So efficiency, if you take your hand and you just lift it off the screen, there is another dimension. This is actually not a square. It's actually a cube. And there is a vertical dimension he calls efficiency. And he says we should not give up and say, sorry, either you fix scope, quality, and time, or you fix either you fix scope, time, and cost, or you fix scope, quality, and cost. You can't fix everything. And he's saying maybe you can if you improve your efficiency. And that's a dimension that we haven't explored yet. We're always playing with scope, we're always playing with quality, we're always playing with time, as if something has to give away. But he's saying there's actually another dimension here. It's called efficiency, which we haven't even played with. So let's go into the next one. The more of these things that you put in place, the more you can protect your borders and grow outwards out of the page, the vertical dimension, and increase your efficiency. All of these things are meant to increase efficiency. Test-driven development, limiting your WIP in progress, doing check and dance, continuous integration, BDD, code reviews. All of these things are meant to improve your efficiency. So you have to put these in place and not give up and say, sorry, we can't fix scope. Or do the waterfall way and say, sorry, we can't fix quality. Okay, so there is a vertical dimension. However, you notice that there are a lot of dots. This will overburden the team. All of these efficiency measures will eventually overburden your team. They're like, I can't do anything. I have to do TDD. I have to do BDD. I have to do continuous integration. I have to do the check and dance. And some teams, if they're not very mature, they will struggle trying to incorporate so many practices. They might not have the technical excellence in order to achieve this level of efficiency. So the next slide talks about habitability. You have to be able to live with the conventions and constraints and policies, right? And so habitability is really important, that you cannot make these decisions about, you can't just go tell people do TDD. It could take 6 months for people to get good at TDD. Not very easy to do, right? It takes a long time. You can't just tell people you have to do continuous integration. You have to do refactoring. All of these things take time to develop. So we have to take the team's comfort level into account. The teams will measure their condition by the mood, not just the rate of delivery, but how comfortable are they? If they feel overburdened with all of these policies and things which are meant to increase efficiency, but instead break the team's back. Okay, so habitability has to be balanced. Okay, and so this is the balance, the yin and the yang, balancing efficiency with habitability. And what happens is over time you introduce efficiency measures and the team starts to master these things, master TDD, master BDD, master continuous integration. The level of discipline gets better and better. And what do we say? Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. So now they're improving their technical excellence and they're becoming more agile. Now what they can do is start to increase more efficiency measures. Okay. So any questions at this point? The priority is safety. The efficiency is an undiscovered dimension, something that we ignore. It's not good enough to just give up and say, sorry, we have to either give away with time, we have to sacrifice time, or we have to sacrifice budget. And what Alistair Coburn is saying, you don't have to sacrifice anything. If you focus on efficiency, don't give up. Uncover better ways of developing software. Try to improve your efficiency, and maybe you can work it within those project constraints of time, not just time, scope, not just time, quality, and cost, but also time, quality, cost, and scope. Okay, but at the same time, recognizing that you have to do stuff which is the team is comfortable with. Okay, so I'm going to skip through the principles. There's too many, but I want to pause here first and ask if anybody has any questions on what I'm talking about here. Okay, if you do, you can type them up. And I'll leave some time at the end to go over these questions. Remember, Scrum is not a software development framework. It is not an agile software development framework. It is a framework for creating your software development framework. Okay, so you'll get these slides so you can see the notes here. This is just not really a good idea to read so many slides. There's so many bullets on a slide. So let's go to the next slide. These are principles that you'll see later to help guide you. Okay. All right, so now we're talking about properties. So before we talk about priorities, which are the three priorities, which are project safety, efficiency, and habitability. The last slide was a bunch of principles that had help you guide these decisions. Now we'll talk about the properties to steer toward. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the core properties are, first of all, frequent delivery, continue to reflect, and close communication. Alistair Coburn recently has revived these ideas in the form of something called the heart of Agile, okay? And he's really, in the face of all of these complexities and conventions that some of these methodologies incorporate, he's saying really what it comes down to is these three things. Well, he's actually has four things in the heart of Agile, but this is an older presentation. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, why do we have properties? The reason is the reason why we have properties as opposed to processes. Now, the crystal method does not prescribe any processes. It focuses more on properties. Why? Because processes are not measurable, but the properties achieved from your own processes are measurable. So we don't measure running, we measure speed. Running is a process. You can't measure running, but you can measure the outcome of running, which is your speed. So we don't care whether you're running or you're walking. The question is, what is your speed? Okay, so a lot of times people will measure themselves based on how well they're following somebody else's process. They'll do a agile maturity assessment. How well are you doing continuous integration? How well are you doing your retrospectives? How well are you following Scrum? And Agile, what Alistair Coburn is saying, we are uncovering better ways. We're not here to copy other people's practices. We are here to uncover better ways and to check to see whether your way is working. You need to measure properties and outcomes rather than just copying other people's processes. Okay. Okay, going on to the next slide. Okay, so let's give you an example of process viewpoint versus property viewpoint. Are we doing 3-week sprints? Well, who cares, right? The question is, on the right-hand side, can we demonstrate at least one new feature to the user every 3 weeks? That's the purpose. That's why we're doing the sprints in the first place. Who cares whether you're doing sprints? If you're demonstrating at least one feature every 3 weeks, that's something that you can measure, okay? We hold retrospectives at the end of every iteration. Well, who cares? Why is that process so important? It says that we are a retrospective team. We're a retrospective team. We implemented 2 new processes, removed 1 process, and tried 1 new technique. That's the purpose of a retrospective, right? Principle 12 of the manifesto says, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to improve how to adjust their behavior and improve accordingly. That's why we have a retrospective. The purpose of a retrospective is not just to have a retrospective. Don't judge the team based on whether they're having retrospectives or not. Judge them based on whether they are being a retrospective team and what is the evidence for that. Okay. All right, so the other ones you can see here, we have daily stand-ups. Again, who cares? What's the result of that? So we don't measure process, so we don't measure properties. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now we have to come up with some strategies. So every framework that you come up with within the Crystal DNA, you have to come up with some strategies. So these are examples of strategies. This list is by no means exhaustive. You will come up with your own techniques and your own strategies. For some people, they work in environments which are very the type of software you're doing is life critical. So you'll have a different strategy. Maybe it'll be more around risk mitigation. For other situations, you'll be doing software which you're working in a very new type of field where nothing's been proven. So you might use something called a tracer bullet, or these are ideas that are borrowed from extreme programming and Scrum. Yeah, most of these are from extreme programming and Scrum. Okay. Okay, so move on to the next. So these are strategies you need to come up with your own. And then there's specific techniques. How do you realize those strategies? So these are down to the practices that you might use around the framework that you create, the border that you create to protect the safety of your project. Okay, so there's a lot of different techniques, and there's no end to the number of techniques. Okay, moving on. Okay, so go on to the next slide. And then Crystal advocates, going back one slide. Crystal advocates when you create your software development methodology, you should have some examples, some worked out examples. What does a unit test look like? What does a definition of done look like? You should have some examples and artifacts so that other people can have a tangible example. Of course, they're free to create their own, but you need to describe to them what you mean. Okay. All right, moving on to the next one. And these working artifacts are, they could be templates, they could be standardized build processes, whatever it is. These are the things that you can put around your to protect your project safety, to keep you from exceeding your borders. Okay, the next one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Crystal's processes. Okay, Crystal, let's look at Crystal's processes. So we go into the next slide. This is a full list of Crystal processes. Okay, no, the previous one. Yeah, so this is a full list of all the processes that you'll find in Crystal. As you can see, there's none. Okay, Crystal does not prescribe. Remember, Crystal is a solution to prescriptive agile, where people say you have to do this, you have to do that. You are supposed to come up with your own processes. A lot of organizations forget we're uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Don't evaluate yourself based on how well you're following Scrum or XP, right? Evaluate yourself based on the very first principle in the manifesto, which is our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing Scrum or XP or Waterfall or DSDM or Scrum Ban or Ban Scrum or Agile, Lean Agile, Agile Scrum, Scrum Lean Agile. You know, I found a new word that was created recently by the SAFE community. It's called Scrum XP. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's just one word, Scrumx. I think that you're supposed to say it's Scrumx because it's like there's no vowels there, Scrumx. It says Scrum, there's no space, it just says XP after that. People are making all kinds of stuff and saying that you must follow these processes. And what Alistair Coburn is saying is you don't, okay? So I teach Scrum. I teach Scrum. But Scrum is not a destination. Scrum is a starting point. All right, and it's a good starting point because it's only 16 pages of text. Now the new version that's coming out will be even less, maybe 13 pages of text. So it's actually a very, very lightweight method, right? And it doesn't prescribe very much. But even that is too prescriptive. Your job is to uncover better ways. So start off doing Scrum because everyone can get started. It's very lightweight document. It only has 3 artifacts, 3 types of roles, and 4 types of meetings. All right, very lightweight method, but it's still prescriptive. It still says you must be doing these things, otherwise you're not doing Scrum. Okay. Okay, so this is the full, but after if you find better ways, then definitely come up with better ways. Okay, so that is the Crystal family. Now I'm going to go to talk about a specific member of the family called Crystal Clear. So let's go on to the next one. So Crystal Clear is Alistair Coburn came up with a way, a nomenclature, a way of determining how you can, what you should, different classifications of methodologies that you create yourself. And there are 2 things which will determine your methodology. Okay, One is the size of the team. Okay. How, and not just the size, but how distributed your team is. The size and distribution of your team. We're working from home, we're working from many different time zones, and how big and how wide is your team? Okay, so that's the first dimension that will help you determine how you can classify the methodology that you come up with. The second one is criticality. Okay, which means what is the consequence of failure? If you deliver late, what could potentially happen? If you deliver with defects, what could potentially happen? If you deliver under scope, what could potentially happen? And if you deliver over budget, what could potentially happen? What is the cost of a defect? What is the cost of a delay? Okay, what is the cost of project overruns? So this is one of the dimensions. It's the horizontal dimension, which is the size and distribution of your team. Now, the idea, the simplest method you could follow, he calls crystal clear, which is about 6 people, maybe 3 to 8 people, all in the same room working on something. We have a very transparent environment where everybody is able to speak to each other. Everybody knows what's going on. So we say it is very clear. Clear. So we say it's very clear, transparent. As you go to more people, you will have less transparency. Larger groups means there's more nodes for communication, more stuff. There's less opportunity for face-to-face communication. 40 people, even less opportunity for communication. People could be in many different rooms, different parts of the building, even different parts of the world. 80 people, you notice how the color is getting darker and darker? That's because we have less transparency. It starts to become more opaque. And then when you have larger groups of people, you're now ending up with something called crystal purple. The color gets darker and darker. Now, crystals, like stones and gems, are often evaluated based on their color. And so that's one way of evaluating a crystal, okay? The next way of evaluating a crystal is the next dimension. So you can go to the next slide. And that is the hardness of your methodology. Crystals, like diamonds and rubies, are measured also by hardness. How hard does your method have to be? And that's going to be determined by these 4 things. What could go wrong? What could fail? And what's the cost of a defect? What's the cost of overrun? What's the cost of delivering below your scope? What's the cost of delivering over budget, right? If the cost is very little, we say loss of comfort. No big deal. Your app crashes on your phone, nobody's going to die. So that if you have loss of comfort, the consequences of project failing or something going wrong in terms of your project not safe, then you will have maybe less documentation, maybe less demand for automated tests and these sorts of things. The next one is money. The next level up in criticality is money. Maybe you can lose some money. Okay. So in some situations, it's okay. Your company can lose some money, and it's part of R&D. It's part of taking risks. It's part of experimentation. They can get that money back. We call it discretionary money. And then there's E, loss of essential money, which means if you lose this money, you're finished as a company. That's very, very serious. So that's the next level. And as you go higher in your hardness, you go higher in the hardness in the crystal, or the rigor that you need to have. More and more things need to be put in place within your software development methodology to prevent bad things from happening. And then finally, loss of life. Okay, so if you look at the Boeing 737 MAX, loss of life, you had very little documentation for the number of changes that happened to that aircraft. Very little checks, very little regulations were applied, and as a result, over 300 people died. So in that situation, you need to have more documentation, more checking, more auditing, more testing, more whatever. And so now your software development methodology becomes very, very heavyweight. Okay, but you'd hope so. Okay, so these are the 2 dimensions seen on one slide. You've got the level of criticality, which is the 6, the 20, the 40. The level of criticality, which is L, E, D, and C. C means loss of comfort, D is loss of discretionary money, E is loss of essential money, and L is loss of life. So that's the criticality. And the other one is how many people and how distributed is your team, and how much, if you have people in different parts of the world and they're working in different time zones, maybe they don't even speak the same language, then you're going to have more documentation because there's less opportunity for face-to-face communication. Whereas in crystal clear, you usually have a bunch of people in the same room. There's less need for documentation. You don't need to do so much audit. You just get stuff done. Okay, so that's it really. I'm going to stop there. You can stop sharing the presentation. This stuff is to me pretty refreshing. And sorry, I realize it's pretty dark here. Let me just turn on the lights. I'm actually in my car. This is again an example of technical excellence enhances agility. All right. I was on my way home to give this presentation, and I looked on my phone, another example of technical excellence, and it showed traffic backed up all the way home. I never realized, because of lockdown here, we're about to begin a 1-month lockdown. Everybody's going crazy again and buying toilet paper. So because of technical excellence, I was able to, Hilmi and I were able to work out a solution, connect over the phone through Zoom. He's sharing my slides. And this is another example of being able to adapt to new situations. And agility is the original name of the document for the Manifesto for Agile Software Development was not the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. It was originally called Adaptive Software Development. Okay, and what leads you to adapt? Continued attention to technical excellence and good design. All right, so if you want to be agile, don't just copy some other people's methodologies. Evolve your technical practices. Evolve your architecture. The companies that are incredibly large and incredibly successful, and they're still agile. It's amazing how large you can be and still be agile. You know, naturally, agile is your ability to change shape and change direction. Big people are not able to change shape and change direction. Children are much more agile than adults. All right. But the question is, how can you be a Microsoft or an Amazon or a Google and be that big and still be agile, still grow into new markets and adapt to situations? Now, we're dealing with unprecedented times where if you are not agile, you are dead. If you cannot switch your market to moving online and you leverage the technology, you'll be out of business, right? So those who refuse to adapt to their situations and hope that this situation will be resolved, the whole COVID-19 situations, those are people who are just refusing to adapt. And we know what history has said about people who refuse to adapt. So, okay. I'm going to leave with a quote, which I had in my slides, which I didn't share with you. I'm going to leave with a quote from Dave Thomas. Dave Thomas is one of the authors of the manifesto. And he said in his article about Agile being dead, he said, saying things like doing Agile right and Agile for dummies are, these types of phrases are meaningless because Agile is not a noun. It's an adjective. You cannot do Agile right. You cannot follow Agile. You cannot use Agile. You can be or become Agile. To say doing Agile right is like saying do orange right. You can't do orange. You can be or become orange. It's an adjective. Then I'll leave you with another quote from a co-author of Dave Thomas. His name is Andy Hunt. These two guys are authors of the original Pragmatic Programming book, which then led to a whole series of books called the Pragmatic Programming series. And Andrew Hunt said, after 10 years of this manifesto, he said, you know what, we haven't got this right. What we haven't got right is helping people work out new practices and new practices and new techniques to help them adapt to their particular situations. Anybody can dogmatically follow the practices prescribed by other people. Agility is about going beyond those practices, going beyond dogma, coming up with new practices and new techniques to adapt to your particular situation. Okay, so this movement has gone completely in a different direction from what was originally intended. Okay, the original intention was to uncover better ways of developing software by doing it, not by copying other people's processes, not by hiring a consultant and to asking them, how do you do it properly, but by doing it yourself and then helping others do it. All right, so agile is not an umbrella term. There's, really, there's no such thing as an umbrella term. I don't know what an umbrella term is. In Arabic, you have damir, you have hal, you have sifa, you have ism, you have fi'l, but you don't have kalma midalla. I don't think that exists in the grammar books. Okay, there's no such thing as that. It's just a metaphor. The midalla is a metaphor. It's a mithal. But it's a very bad metaphor. Because if you stand under the umbrella, you have very limited space. There's only so much stuff you can do. But according to the opening statement of the manifesto, we are uncovering better ways. So there's an infinite number of ways. Okay. And you don't have to be under the umbrella of following other people's practices. Create your own process, create your own techniques that are useful to you. You are dealing with unique circumstances. The mountain you are climbing is different. There's no process for climbing a mountain. It's a cooperative, collaborative, economic, strategic game, and it requires invention and communication. All right. Any questions?
Yes, thank you for your decision, Abid. As you said, Agile is an approach, or but how to say that I am agile, or
Okay.
everyone
So,
say I'm doing agile.
yeah, you can't though. You can't. If you want to be agile, then what you have to do is you have to touch your toes. You have to put your arm behind your head like this. This is what agility is, yeah? You should see some of the things that my son can do. Yeah, they can do bridges and backflips. I go to these conferences and people say, I'm an agile coach. I said, really, you're an agile coach? He's a big guy sitting there. Really, he walks with a stick. How agile are you now? Agile means your ability to change shape and change direction easily. If you're a dancer, I'll say, yeah, you're agile, okay? If you're a footballer, able to change direction at high speeds very quickly, I would say you're agile, okay? But we can't call ourselves an agile coach unless we are agile. And my children are much more agile than I am, okay? So we have to go back to the original meaning of the document and what they were talking about. The document is not about agile, it's about software development. And it's about how do you achieve agility through, it's about how do you achieve agility within software development. And it clearly says, continuous attention and technical excellence enhances agility. So I'm not an agile coach, by the way. I would say I'm an agile software development coach. I coach people in software development and I help people become more agile. But I'm not an agile coach because that's describing me. I'm the Mawsuf and I'm not agile. All right. Every year I become less and less agile. It's a part of the aging process. Okay. Especially during lockdown, I put on some weight. So the idea is that I can be a software development coach. I can help people become more agile. So I can call myself an agile software development coach, or I can call myself a business agility coach. I help organizations and businesses become more agile. So that makes sense grammatically, business agility coach. But no, I cannot be an agile coach. Scrum is not an agile framework. It's a very rigid framework. Those of you who know it, you don't have to be an engineer to know I will never build on an agile framework. Frameworks have to be firm, strong, and rigid. What if a framework is bending and changing shape and is very agile and flexible, then it's not very good. It has to be able to support the weight of other things. So Scrum is not a non-agile framework, okay? It's a rigid framework, but it's very lightweight, which means it will help you become more agile. Why? Because it doesn't prescribe very much. You have to adapt. Remember this, the muradif for agile is adaptive. So because Scrum does not prescribe very much stuff, it only prescribes 3 roles, 3 artifacts, and 4 types of meetings, it means you now have to be more adaptive. You have to come up with ways to help you deliver within that framework. But the framework itself is rigid. Same with extreme programming. Extreme programming comes with 12 practices. And it's very rigid. If you're not doing those 12 practices, then you're not doing extreme programming. But it's not very prescriptive. It only comes with 12 practices, which means you have to invent the rest of the stuff in order to succeed. Some methods are incredibly prescriptive. The rational unified process has 120 artifacts. And types of meetings that you need to have and types of roles that you need to have. So these are very prescriptive. So we say that because they're prescriptive, you have to adapt less. You just follow the cookbook, right? And you just follow it, and you don't have to come up with your own things, which means you don't have to adapt and invent your own solutions. You just copy the stuff. Safe is another example. I try, one day I'm going to count them all up. How many documents, how many artifacts, how many roles? We wouldn't say this is a very, very prescriptive framework. And what Alistair Coburn is saying is that the level of prescription is going to be determined by the two things. One is how big and distributed your team is, and two is what's the cost of a defect. So you have to choose your methods and your techniques based on your particular circumstances. That's what agility is about, according to Andy Hunt and Dave Thomas. And these are people who authored the manifesto. So I'm just quoting straight from them. Okay.
Okay, guys, I think we have reached the end of the session. I just will stop the record and we can continue in your questions after that. Before doing it, I'd like to thank you everyone for attending the webinars and looking forward to see you in upcoming webinars. I would like to thank Mona Radwan and Abid Qureshi for the nice talk. Actually, Abid is not only the guest, he is my mentor. And I would like to thank you for being always supportive and to joining us in this webinar. Thank you, everyone. I'll end the record.
Really interesting talk about Crystal. Thank you very much. And I will start changing my title on LinkedIn from Agile Coach to Business Agility Coach or something like that. According to your thought today, I get the point, and it's very relevant. Yes, we will never be agile. We will do agile and try to be more agile by having agility around. Okay, now we can stop the recording and start receiving your questions. And Abid, Helmi, and myself can answer the question for the upcoming 10 minutes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.